Did you just fall and get hurt? All you need to do is clean it, apply pressure, and put a Band-Aid over the top. What an easy fix, right? For most people, this is exactly the case. But for people with hemophilia, this necessarily isn't. A deep cut could send you rushing to the hospital, or just a bruise could cause serious internal bleeding. While this may be difficult for you to imagine, this necessarily isn't for me. I was diagnosed with hemophilia in March of 2020. But since many of you probably don't know what hemophilia even is, today we'll be doing a case study over the topic, a quick history and physical check, and a pedigree chart to show who can get hemophilia and how. Now, let's put some gauze around the wound and get to learning. To start this healing process, we first need to begin our case study. We first need to know what this is. Mayo Clinic describes hemophilia as a rare bleeding disorder in which the blood cannot clot in the typical way because it doesn't have enough of blood clotting proteins, called clotting factors. There are 3 different kinds of hemophilia. The first one, in an article by Cleveland Clinic, it describes the 3 types of hemophilia. The first one is hemophilia A, which is where you lack factor VIII. This is the most common type, as 10 in 100,000 people have this type. The next type is hemophilia B, which is where you lack factor IX. This is a little more rare, and 3 in 100,000 people have this type. The most rare type of hemophilia is hemophilia C, which is where you lack factor XI. 1 in 100,000 people have this type, myself included. As continuing our case study, let's learn a little bit more about the blood clotting factors themselves. There is prothrombin plastintine, which measures the external blood clotting numbers. And there is partial thromboplastintine, which measures the internal numbers. Wrapping up our case study, as our case study goes on trial now, let's learn about a little bit of the history of hemophilia. The Hemophilia Handbook talks about Dr. John Conrad Otto, who discovered hemophilia in 1803, which only affected males at the time. But later on, they soon called hemophilia the royal disease because Queen Victoria got it from her father and then passed it down to her son, and her daughter was a carrier. In the 1900s, Dr. Judith Graham Poole discovered that you can freeze and thaw plasma into a factor-rich plasma called cryoprecipitate. Cryoprecipitate had rich factor VIII, which is what these hemophiliacs lacked. The way this was transfused was from person to person. As somebody with this disease, that would not be applicable today due to diseases in the blood. New forms of cryoprecipitate are made in a recombinant fashion in human cell lines. Okay. Now that we've learned about what hemophilia is and the history of it, let's move on to the pedigree chart and see who can get hemophilia and in what ways. A pedigree chart is a chart that visibly shows how a genetic trait is inherited and who can get it. Oh yeah. Hemophilia is an X-linked recessive trait, which makes it more common in males because males only have one X chromosome. It makes the severity more. How hemophilia is passed through females is in 2 ways. If one parent is a carrier and the other doesn't have it, this makes it less likely for them to get hemophilia. As we look through the pedigree chart of this, we can also see how it's different to realize that it's a little harder for females to get hemophilia because they have 2 X chromosomes. They have 2 X chromosomes. If they inherit 2 copies from each parent, in this case, they would not have hemophilia because it's only on 1 X chromosome, which would have abnormal clotting factors. And the other X chromosome would have normal clotting factors, which balances it out. Hemophilia is passed from female to female, with one of them being the carrier and the other one doesn't show symptoms. This makes the female's alleles heterozygous. There's an example of this standing right in front of you. The Center for Disease Control pulled up an example where the father is without hemophilia and the mother is a carrier. In this instance, there would be there's several different ways if these people were to have children. There's a 25% chance their son would have hemophilia and a 25% chance their son would not. For females, it's a little different. There's a 25% chance that the females would be a carrier, or just a 25% chance the female would not have it at all, but could pass it down to her other generations. Now that the wound is cleaned and started healing, it's time to pack up the first aid kit and see what we've learned today. We first looked at a case study, which was what hemophilia is. Then we looked at the history and physical, which taught us about the background of hemophilia. And finally, we looked at the pedigree chart of who can inherit hemophilia and how. Since we stopped the bleeding and can now change the bandage, just remember, if you're ever bleeding, all you need to do is clean it and apply pressure. Thank you.